wanted to talk about is your tagline. I absolutely love it. I think it just makes your heart beat and you just feel like you're part of something. And so together we rise. Can you share a little insight on how that came about and really how you feel about it? Obviously it's something that you love too, but I feel like it brings the community together, and I love the commercials that are out there and just really love the stamp you put on as you're outwardly facing with that.
Yeah, so to me, I think the best marketing works both externally and internally. And together we rise, I think to me is it's the sort of the mantra of the university, right? It is, that's how we are thinking, right? And we want our students, our faculty, our staff to think this way, and we want to make sure the community understands this is our goal, right? And what that means for an educational institution to say it out loud, like really loudly, right? Like that this is how we're going to succeed, not just as an institution, but as a region.
I love it. So like I said that already. Can we talk a little bit about you're experiencing growth in enrollment, right? And I don't think all universities are really at that point. And so can you share a little bit about that growth and really the diversity of the growth as well? I think it would be great for people listening to really understand, just where that enrollment is coming from.
Yeah, so it's coming from a whole bunch of different places. So over the last 4 years, we've grown by just over 12%, 12.1%, which is pretty remarkable given the last couple of years, right? The last 4 years, what's happening in higher education. But that growth is important in how it's happening. So 50% of our undergraduate students now are first generation in college.
Wow.
Right, so that's a huge increase and a way that we're really serving our region, right? These are students who might not otherwise go to college. They're choosing to come to Green Bay. We're increasing the educational credentials of our region. Second is we're seeing a huge gap now or change in the age of our students.
Really?
So we have about 3,000 students who are still getting some sort of credit while they're in high school. The average age of our students that aren't in high school is now 24.
So that's a lot higher than traditionally.
Right, so it's a way of us to think differently about who a student is and where that growth is coming from. We're also seeing to match sort of the demographics of Green Bay. So we almost match up exactly the diversity of the city of Green Bay. And we're increasing our Hispanic population in particular. Last year increased by 18%. And that we're getting similar numbers to that each year now, which shows about how we're thinking about groups that typically have not tend to think about higher education as an option, how to make sure that we are keeping up with the change that's happening in our region, to make sure that all of the region feels like higher education is a place for them.
So you're really fulfilling your mission about accessibility and meeting unique students and making sure they have an access point to come in. And so your numbers are the data to prove that you're really executing at a very high level. I don't remember the number, but I know it's really high, the number of graduates that actually stay here. And so from a business perspective, and we're on this talent gap and talent war, and just really having businesses listening understand the role of the university for us to grow our workforce. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so we know that about 70% of our students come from Northeast Wisconsin. We know that 70% of our students never leave.
That's wonderful.
We don't know if it's the same 70%, right? But we know that it is, and that 90% of our students come from the state of Wisconsin.
Wow.
Right? 10% come from the country and the world. This is important, right? Because we are a regional university. The numbers should look like that, right? We are not trying to compete with the Madisons of the world who are they're recruiting globally, right? We also have students who come from all over the world to Green Bay for specific programs, right? But we're really thinking about how we educate our local population, our regional population, right, between Sheboygan all the way to the top of the state, up the coastline, and how to make sure that those students graduate and have opportunities to then have their careers in this area.
That's fantastic. So Chancellor, I'm going to pivot a little bit and turn from talking about the university and ask some questions so the viewers can learn a little bit more about you as well. So could you share, when you look back, really, is there one or two experiences that you had that helped shape who you are in your leadership role, in your career path?
Yeah, I think so. One, I would say for sure is that I was trained as an orchestra conductor, and I got a doctorate in orchestral conducting, and I was all excited I was got incredibly lucky to get hired to conduct an orchestra. I conducted the Georgia Symphony Orchestra. And I got there about the same time that almost half of the orchestras in the country folded.
Oh,
right?
wow.
And so it really informed about thinking about how to make what you're doing relevant, right? And I think about that in education all the time, right? Is what is it that we're doing that how are we relevant to as many people as possible, right? And that's a really important key for education in the modern age, right? Is that creating that relevancy. And so being entrepreneurial, right? So understanding what it takes to run a nonprofit and one where the odds are stacked against you,
right?
Under difficult business models, right? Which higher education is right now, right? With the way the funding model works, you have to be entrepreneurial, and you have to be you have to try to think of problems in different ways, right? And not use the same answer to a problem that we've tried over and over and over again.
5 years ago, right? Things are different.
Things are different, right? Absolutely. And so I think that experience really helped me do that.
That's wonderful. So out of the challenge came just a whole different holistic viewpoint and innovation and creativity and
Yep.
And we're the benefits of that. So
well, I don't know about that, but I think it is, I always loved the line as a musician. I think it was Isaac Stern who said that, to paraphrase, he didn't understand what it meant to be a musical entrepreneur. If you are a musician, you are by default an entrepreneur, right?
Right.
And that, to me, that's really important in education, right? And for all of our students to think that way. So one of the things we're doing in entrepreneurship is to not put entrepreneurship just in the business school, right? Every student at UW Green Bay should have an entrepreneurial mindset. That's really important. That's how the world works, right? And no matter what field you're in, how to see opportunity, how to see a problem and fix it. And that's what we're trying to do.
Well, that's very special. If you could go back in time and tell your younger self something, what would that conversation be about?
I think first and foremost would be to not be afraid to fail. I think most of us.
It's hard for people, right?
Yeah, and me included, right? I think it took me a long time to get comfortable enough to try something and recognize going into it that it might not work, but that I was doing it for the right reasons. That's become really acute to me in the last 3 years doing this job, right? Is there is how to have the I guess I don't know if courage is the right word, but to think, not worry about failure, but to see the potential success that could result from a decision, and then be willing to accept the failure if it happens and try again.
Pick up the pieces and get back up, right? I always call it as failing forward, and hopefully there's other people that help me in that forward motion, right? So Absolutely. You're not moving alone. And certainly, you have the university and the chancellor have so much support from the community, and everybody has so much admiration for your leadership and what you're doing to move the university forward. So if something does fail, you're not alone.
Okay, well, that's good. That's right.
Do you have a famous quote or any words of wisdom or advice, that you'd like to share just as people are pursuing education or are faced with a challenge, right? You mentioned one that really was, you turned it into a positive about how you were going to view the world and education. Is there anything you'd like to share with our listeners today?
Yeah, I think, one of the quotes that first of all, I'm a huge football fan, but not in the typical way in this conversation I think that would happen. I'm a soccer fan, right? And so I love the Packers now being in Green Bay. I truly love the Packers, but I'm a huge Liverpool fan. My son and I, it's one of my boys. That's like a passion we share together. And their coach, Jurgen Klopp, has a great saying, which is that that we're going to try, we're going to work as hard as we can, and if we fail, we're going to fail in the most spectacular way.
I love it.
And it's one of my favorite quotes, that it basically just says we're going to do things for the right reason. We're going to work as hard as we can work to make it happen, and if it doesn't work, then we're going to fail spectacularly, which I think is a really great way to say it.
That is a really great quote and just inspirational, right? So keep moving forward and I love that too. So I appreciate you sharing that with me and with our listeners. And Chancellor, thank you so much for your time today. It gave our viewers an opportunity to learn a little bit more about the university, learn a little bit more about you, and really how the university and the greater Green Bay area is so connected. And I appreciate your leadership.
I appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you.
Thanks.